Thank you for joining us. And so on the next slide, a little overview of the presentation. We'll tell a brief bit about Konama and our mission and how we started, and then we'll go over the guidelines. So this presentation mainly is going over the grant guidelines for this year, how to apply, how to access the grant portal. And then at the end of the sharing on our part, we welcome questions that you might have specific to your project ideas, um, specific to our guidelines and the grant portal. Any kind of issues that you have or questions or ideas are welcome at that time. And then we'll share some resources and contact information. So on the next slide. So basically our mission is to sorry, people keep joining the waiting room. So our mission is to, sorry, um, improve the health in New Mexico. We're a statewide funder. And so our mission is is our mission is accomplished by our helping to support nonprofits around the state to achieve their mission. So all of our work is tied up in the work that folks do around the state. So we love to get to know the work that you're doing. If you're interested in applying for a grant, we can speak about project ideas and how your projects might fit with Konama's funding priorities. In the next slide, we discuss how we started. Konama's endowment comes from the sale of Blue Cross Blue Shield when they went from for-profit to nonprofit. So that investment that the state made in the nonprofit status of Blue Cross Blue Shield stayed with New Mexico in the form of Konama. So that's why we're a statewide funder. We try to support as best we can the projects around the state. And on the next slide is a little bit more about just the summary of our mission and purpose is to fund projects around the state that have to do with improving the health of all New Mexican communities, especially the underserved. We have a focus on systems change, and we will get into that a little bit more when we cover the grant guidelines. And to talk about the grant guidelines, I'm going to pass the mic over to Linda. You're on mute, Linda.
I'm on mute. Okay, there we go. I just unmuted. So very well. Thank you, Dennis, for sharing that really valuable information. And so Dennis gave us a little bit of history on Conadva and how we began and what it is that we focus on. Today, we're going to be talking about our annual grant cycle. And so one of the things we do want to go through is what our cycle actually looks like. Since we have been doing this for about 23 years or so, we've tried to really streamline the process and have a real good opportunity that it's very transparent in how it is that we review applications. And so, as you know, the application period has opened. So it is open as of today. It opened on May the 20th, and it will be open up until June 21st at 11:59 p.m. Please make sure that you do have your application submitted at that time, because our grant making system will turn off right at that time, and we're not able to accept any late applications. So once your application has been submitted, we begin the application review process. And what the process includes is we do have a first level of review, which is our staff members. We will review your application to ensure that you meet the general requirements, such as you are a 501c3, you are okay with the Attorney General's office, those sort of legal opportunities that we need to make sure that all of our grant applicants have followed. After we have reviewed that, then what happens is our applications will then go to our grant making committee. Our grant making committee, which actually it should be our community reviewers, are looking at it the next step. So our community reviewers are basically community members within all 5 of our different regions. We have some that are representing all of our counties. And so that's a really great opportunity for us to get different perspectives on what it is that we look at for our grants and to make sure that we're sharing the wealth basically within the entire state. So they review these applications. They are given a rubric to follow when they're reviewing the applications. Once those individuals have reviewed our applications, we will take about the top 50 or so applications, and then that goes over to our grant making committee. That committee is comprised of some of our board of directors, and they will then choose the final people that will be getting the grants. One thing to keep in mind is this is a competitive grant process, which means that we do receive anywhere from 125 or so applications each year. And so obviously we're not able to accept all of those grant applications and fund them. So keep that in mind when you're also writing these applications, but do rest assured that we do have 2 different committees that are reviewing them to ensure that, or to evaluate them to see how they match up with what our priorities are and what we would like to fund for within our organization. Once our grant making committee has reviewed these applications and they have the recommended grant applicant or recipients, it then goes to our board of directors. Our board of directors will then ratify those recommendations, and that will not happen until about October. So this process of when the grants close on June the 21st up until the middle part of October is when we actually go through the review process. Once our board has ratified those recommendations, it does go before, or it does get, you do get notified of the decision as far as if you have been awarded a grant with us, I'm sorry. So once you're notified, if you have been awarded, you will get to the opportunity to receive an award document, which is our memorandum of understanding, or giving you information a little bit about us and what our requirements are within the grant time period. Once you've signed that, then we will disperse funding, and then your grant implementation will start January 1st until December 31st. So please keep that in mind when you are applying for funding so that you know when the actual application start date is. Our review process, as I explained, does go into 3 different steps: our initial review from our staff, as well as our community reviewers, and then our grant making committee does review. Our community reviewers look more from a technical sense, where our grant making committee looks deeper into their alignment with what we want to fund, if it follows within our goals and our priorities. One thing that we have done new this year that I think is an excellent opportunity for so many of our grant applicants is that if you go to our website, and we will go through that a little bit further later on in our presentation, you will also be able to see our 2024 grant guidelines. On the appendices of that, the grant guidelines, you'll be able to see the rubrics that we use for both the community reviewers as well as the grant making committee. What I highly suggest is that you do look at these rubrics, and that you or somebody within your staff or your organization look to see how you align with some of those questions that are going to be asked of our community reviewers, as well as our grant making committee. Also keep in mind that people that are reviewing your applications may know nothing about your organization. So when you do write your information in your grant, you are being specific, and you don't take for granted that they know what you already do, because most of our reviewers will not know your organization. And so definitely keep that in mind, and definitely use the rubrics that we do provide as a guide on what we're going to be looking at when evaluating your applications. Deadlines for your grants are also, everything is listed on our website. So I do encourage you once again to go to the rubrics to see where we're going to be evaluating. The grant cycle, the grant applications were opened up on May the 20th. They will close June the 21st. You will be notified early November. One thing I do want to mention is because we do go through a 3-step process, after step number 2, which is our community reviewers, you will receive, if you have not made it to the 3rd stage of our process, you will get notifications sometime in August or early September to thank you for submitting your application, but you're not going to go further within our process. We do that so you're not waiting to see if you're even going to get funded, since we don't notify you till November if you are successful. If you do make the top of our grant applicants, you do get notified in early November if you have been awarded the grant or not. So that is a good indication, if you don't hear from us early September, that you have made it to the final stage of our review process. Once you have received notification, if you are one of the awardees, then in December, you do get your funding for that. You will get one check for the whole amount that you would be awarded, that you have been approved for the 2025 calendar year. Our grant requests this year have changed slightly. We are going to be accepting requests for $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, and $30,000. Any of you that previously have applied know that our max last year was $25,000. So we have increased it slightly to give more of an opportunity to fund more of a project that we know is needed. One thing that I'm very thankful and very proud of is that last year we were able to fund about $650,000 through this process. And so we were able to award about 26 grants through that. This year, we are not only able to award an increase increase the amount that we're going to be awarding to 30,000, but we are also going to be able to increase the amount of organizations that will receive funding. So we estimate anywhere from 26 to 34 grants will get approved within those amounts that are allowed to be requested. And so that's something for you to keep in mind. And when you're working on your budget, those are the 4 amounts that you want to consider when looking at the CONALMA request that you do make. When you are doing and evaluating your requests, if you know what you're going to be applying for, one thing we do want to go through is the 6 priority areas that CONALMA focuses on. These are these 6 areas that, if you are applying for funding, that should align somewhere within those priority areas. One of them is access. We want to make sure that the grants that we approve are going to allow access to health and health care, as well as to improving the health status and quality of life, especially for those that are uninsured and medically underserved in New Mexico. And when we define the word, when we say the word health, we mean that very broadly. What we're looking at is the social determinants of health. So it does include, food and shelter and all of those large, things that do affect health more than just going to the doctor and physical health. The other thing that is one of our priorities is our culturally appropriate services. We want to work at supporting to reduce health disparities, especially for our rural and tribal areas within our state. We want to focus on immigrant families and also people of color. We want to support not only community-based or traditional approaches, but we want to look at traditional and community-based approaches to health to support the hardest to reach people within our communities. We also support evaluation and research. We want to go ahead, and this includes both data analysis, support of policy and advocacy, and the creation of new knowledge. Something that I would definitely like for you to think about when you're applying for funding from us is that we're looking for system change. We want to make sure that what we're doing today is going to help the state, help our communities, not just today, but in the future. And so that's where evaluation and research comes into play, to see if what you're doing today is really going to have that long-term effect to make a systems change. The other thing we want to focus on is health promotion. Health promotion is what we would define as an emphasis on education, prevention, and then also the personal environment. We want to make sure those people that are affected by all these health disparities have the opportunity to know about what's going on, how to learn how to live a healthier life, how to prosper in their rural communities, how to bring some of these services to the tribal and areas that right now are not getting some of the services that they desperately need. Another one of our focuses is policy. We want to make sure that we look at health policy formation and advocacy efforts that will improve the health and well-being of people who live in New Mexico, regardless of their status. We want to make sure that everybody is affected, but we know in order for us to have a long-term effect, we need to work on the policy within our state. As well as we want to look at workforce development. We want to help in developing professionals who reflect the cultural and linguistic diversity of communities within New Mexico. And we want to go ahead and emphasize that we want to not only look at the traditional ways of doing things, but also non-traditional trainings and educational opportunities. We know that our communities within New Mexico are very diverse. And we know because we have rural, we have more urban, and we have tribal lands, that the way we do things in one area may not be culturally appropriate in a different area. And so their workforce development may look a little different within all of our communities. One thing, as I mentioned, is while we have our 6 priorities, we want to make sure that we're focusing on the long-term effect and how that's going to make a change, not just today, but also in our future years. We want to make sure that we're changing some of these generational cycles of being unhealthy, no matter what the word unhealthy would mean, whether it's part of the social determinants of health, physical health, mental health, all of those aspects that go into health and health care. When you are writing your applications, one of the things that we do look like is, and one thing I did mention, I'm going to take a step back for just a second, is that we do want to go ahead and focus on these 6 priorities. And one thing that we want to emphasize is that for the most part, we don't fund direct services. So we can, and we have in the past, but traditionally and based upon our priorities, we may not fund many of those direct service requests. So when you are looking at what you want to request funding for, keep that in mind. And if there is a program that you're thinking about that you may want to apply for, you may want to send Dennis or myself a message and maybe run the program that you'd like to apply for through us, just not really for approval, but just to see if it falls within some of our priorities, so that you know you're applying for a program that we may want to fund that falls within our guidelines. When we're evaluating our applications, we want to look at proposals that are strong. What it is that you communicate to us so that we can evaluate and see if it's going to meet our priorities. One thing we look at is a sense of urgency. Is it timely and is it necessary? Is it something that is going to affect our communities in which we all work at today? And we know the sense of urgency is different for different communities. So keep that in mind as well, based upon your own community, that we feel you know you are the expert on your community and the needs, as long as you are, it's a collaborative effort, as long as you are aware of your community and what it is that your community needs in that sense of urgency. The other thing we look at when we are looking at proposals is we're looking at health needs and gaps. Are we really looking at the underserved individuals in New Mexico, those that live here? Are we looking at those that are low income, the uninsured, the underinsured, those that live in rural communities, our immigrants, tribal areas, our people with disabilities, LGBTQs, our elders, and our seniors? Those are all some of the areas that we want to make sure we're covering. Well, that's not inclusive. That does give us a good opportunity to see if that is where we want that if that aligns within what it is that our proposals that are very strong want to address as well. We want to make sure that when you are doing these proposals, that you are able to give us clear objectives and goals. Make sure when you're giving us these objectives and goals that they're result oriented, but they're also not so far out of reach that within the 12-month period that you are getting funded, there'd be no opportunity for you to actually meet those goals. We want to see with what you're doing that these are realistic goals and that these are goals that are going to also be something that your community is going to see a positive effect from. We want to make sure that they are community-led solutions, which definitely includes community input, collaborative efforts. Collaborative efforts really do make a difference when you are writing your application and we're reviewing them. Because when we can see that you do have support from other entities and that you have done some research, maybe it is previous meetings you've attended, whatever it is, but you have a clear understanding and they're community-led decisions and community-led solutions, I should say, as well as a focus on systems change. We want to make sure we're hitting the root causes within the system that are affecting these things of change. And one thing that, and I'll use my analogy, and I've used this analogy many times, but it's one that I truly do like to share. And one thing I think about is the ogre and the baby analogy. How do we want to approach things? Do we want to be the ogre that's at the bottom of the waterfall that is just catching all these babies as they fall? Or do we want to be the organization that we have the ogres at the top and is preventing these babies from actually falling? We want to be the agency or the organization that is helping to prevent them from falling. Well, we also understand in order to get to being the top of the waterfall where these babies aren't falling, we do have to take care of some of those needs as they are falling down that waterfall. So something, to keep in mind when you're looking at systems change and if what you're doing today is really going to be affecting generations to come, and if it is looking at something to change within our system, and when we say system, we don't necessarily only mean within our entire state, but we're looking at also, are you making a systems change on the project or program that you are focused on? Are you looking at a systems change within your community? And when we say community, we're not just referring to your geographical community. We're looking at a community based on those you serve. Are we looking at the low-income population if that's the community that you serve, our low-income community? If you are working with people with disabilities, that's your community. And so we also, as I mentioned, use that as a very broad word that we use in order to make sure that we're all focusing on the same thing when we're evaluating our applications. One thing to also keep in mind when you are completing your proposal for a grant for our grant application is that you're able to connect the dots within your application and don't leave anything up to chance or to interpretation. I'll mention it again. You'll have for your application anywhere from, I would say, 8 to 9 to possibly 10 people that are reviewing your application, of which they are from around the state. So make sure that when you're explaining what it is that you're doing, that you give us the information because we don't want to have to guess at what you're doing. In addition to, we don't want to assume. And you may have a great application, but if you don't give us as much detail or impactful detail, then we can't fairly evaluate you. Again, keep in mind that this is a competitive grant process. So out of 125 or so applications, we're going to be able to approve about 35-ish, 30, 35 around there. So keep that in mind when you are applying. Something else that I will mention at this point is that if you're not approved for one of our grants, it may not be that we don't value your application or that you did something wrong within your application. It could just be that we had other requests that maybe showed more of a sense of urgency or that had filling in the gaps that are needed within a community itself. So just keep that in mind as you are writing your application. Just make sure you're giving us clear opportunities to read what it is that you're doing, just in case that we have people that are not familiar with your organization. So our grants are open to nonprofits that are 501c3 organizations. If you are not a 501c3, we do have an opportunity for you to still apply through a fiscal sponsor. There are a couple of different requirements if you do have a fiscal sponsor, but if you are a 501c3, please make sure that you are in good standing with both the Secretary of State as well as the Attorney General's office in order for us to accept your application. If you are a current grant recipient or a past grant recipient, you may again apply. One thing to keep in mind is that our grants are not multi-year, they are within the calendar year. So if you applied for one grant, for example, last year and you were approved, I would not encourage you to apply for the same grant with the same goals for this year. If you have different steps within your process of what you are doing within your organization or for the program you got approved for in previous years, as long as you can clearly define that the previous grant was for, say, step 1 or step 2, and what you would want to request funding for is to complete the project, possibly that would be a step 3 or a step 4, then you may want to consider that. But generally speaking, we don't typically approve those that are for the exact same program for multiple years. Another thing to keep in mind is that the program that you're applying for must benefit the people living in New Mexico. That is crucial because we are a New Mexico-based private foundation. We must make sure that the money we spend is actually helping our people that are living within New Mexico. Our priority communities, our communities that are marginalized because of race, language, gender, disability, sexual orientation, or spiritual beliefs. We want to make sure that we are focusing also on immigrant, rural, and border communities. That also includes our tribal areas that we do want to include as our priority communities. We want to prioritize also our low income and our under-resourced communities within our state, people suffering from chronic health conditions and trauma-related health inequities, people that are underinsured, uninsured, or the medically underserved. So those are the groups that we have prioritized as some of the things that we want to work on within our organization. If you are, I'm sorry, I think I missed one. Yes. One thing that the screen I did miss is called the eligibility criteria one, that the foundation supports requests that help do a system or a network versus individual. And so this is where I was mentioning that for direct services, we typically don't fund that, but we want to look at opportunities that are going to make a systems change, help a community, as well as we want to focus on those small grassroots organizations, as well as medium-sized organizations. We want to encourage all of you to apply. One thing I will mention is that I was evaluating the applications or the grant recipients last year that were approved, and we approved pretty much within the 26 organizations that we approved last year. It was a pretty equal disbursement between those organizations that were small, medium, and large. And we define large by being over 1.5 million as far as your budget, medium $250,001 to 1.5, and your small ones are less than 250,000. So even if you are a small grassroots organization, you have just as much a big opportunity to get approved as our large ones. And proof in that is last year when we were able to fund an equal amount at our 3 different levels. If you are not a 501c3, you do have an opportunity to still apply through a fiscal sponsor. What we would need is that through your fiscal sponsor, we must be able to verify that they are a 501c3. They are, once again, okay with the Attorney General, Secretary of State's office. And once we've seen that, then you can use them as your fiscal sponsor. One thing to keep in mind is if somebody is going to be your fiscal sponsor, we will need to have some sort of information from them, notification that they are going to be your fiscal sponsor, so that we know that they are aware of this and they know you're applying under their 501c3. When you are applying for grants with CONALMA, some of the required things that you will need to do is you will need to attach certain items to your grant application. One of them is your proposal budget. This is your program, what you're applying for us, that is that specific budget. We do have on our grant portal, as well as on our website, a template for you to use for your budget. That you can utilize, that we do want to be uploaded into our system. But we also, you'll have an opportunity on that budget to where you will be able to list all the all the funding that you have available for this program that you're proposing to us, as well as the expenses. There is a column that is available that you will be able to tell us what it is that you want to use CONALMA's money to use within your budget. So that is an opportunity. There is a fact sheet that is on our website as well that will give you some answers to some of your budget questions. One thing that you will also need to upload for us is your most current organizational budget. We want to know all your funding sources, your major expense categories. And so if your fiscal year ends on June the 30th, please go ahead and give us your upcoming fiscal year budget. If you are using a fiscal agent, we want to know your organizational budget, not your fiscal agent's budget. If you are going to be applying from one of our tribal lands, our tribal areas, you will need to have a tribal support letter. This letter does basically work, it will say that you are working with our sovereign nations, pueblos, or tribal communities, and you must upload that letter of support that says they do support what it is you're doing. While all of our application information is due on June 20th, the 21st at 11:59, if you have a delay in receiving the tribal support letter, and this applies only to the tribal support letter, what you will want to do is upload a paper within that one section and tell us that you will be getting that letter of support, but you'll also want to email, and I'll give you the email address shortly, and let us know that that support letter is upcoming. It's forthcoming, I should say. Otherwise, everything within your grant application must be complete. And the only thing that we will wait a little bit for is that tribal support letter, because oftentimes it does take a little bit of time for us to receive that. Everything else is due by the deadline of June 21st. So what is it that you can apply for funding? As I mentioned, we will award funding up to $30,000. In addition to that, you may use money for your personnel, for your staff, for contractors, for operational expenses, for meeting and travel, and other indirect and direct expenses. One thing to keep in mind is we do cap the amount of administrative expenses, a percentage that you can apply for, as far as just complete admin. But if you have individuals that are actually running this program, that are actually doing the day-to-day work of it, you can use their salary as part of the budget that you submit to CONALMA, and you can use some of the funds that you're requesting from us to support that staffing cost. We understand that these programs don't run on their own, that you need to have staffing in order to run them. So you can use that as an expense within your budget. One of the limits that we do have is if you are going to be purchasing equipment. we do max that amount off at $5,000. So any equipment max is 5,000, where everything else you will have an opportunity to put within your budget. One thing I will mention here is that when you do your budget for us and things that are allowable costs, is that you are going to be asked to directly align what your activities are with your funding and expense. So whatever your goals and objectives and your program is, you need to make sure you can directly align with that expense, whether it's personnel, whether it's using a contractor, an evaluator, meetings or travel. Keep that in mind when you are working through your budget, because we do want to see those dots connected. Some of the exclusions on who can apply and what we'll fund is a lot of the basic ones. We're not going to fund any political campaign, no political lobbying, no other partisan activities, because we are a nonpartisan organization, not political whatsoever. If you are prohibited from 501c3 from applying, or you're not a 501c3, or the IRS prohibits you from being a C3, we cannot approve funding for you. We also will not support individuals, scholarships, or fellowships. We do not do any capital campaigns, and we do not support any endowment. Annual fundraising campaigns are not a part of who will fund. Event sponsorships, debt liquidation, or clinical research. Those are some of the specifics that are not funded through what it is that we can approve funding for. Additionally, some things that are very important that we will do have restrictions and exclusions is we have to ensure that every organization that we fund does not discriminate against based on race and ancestry, national or ethnic origin, disability, sex, age, religion, sexual orientation, or gender identity. We have to make sure that our grants are not made for religious purposes. And again, we will not fund any grants for construction, renovation, or repairs. We are program oriented, and so that is what we want to support. I know all these other opportunities may be there for you to repair or to do construction, but that's not something we would focus on. You will have to look for funding from a different source for that. Within our organization, we do have a grant making portal that we do use. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the share for just a moment, or I'm going to do a new share, and I'm going to get to you to our website, which our website is very simple. It is conalma.org, CONALMA.org. You will notice if you've been to our website, we have a whole new design, a whole new logo, a whole new website. We're very proud of this website because we have made it incredibly easy for any of our applicants to actually be able to see what it is that we do and how it is that we operate. What you'll want to do here, and I was mentioning this just a few minutes ago, if you go to our grant making, you will see that we have statewide grants. Here is where you will be able to see our guidelines, frequently asked questions, application questions, as well as a budget template. One thing I didn't mention is that while you can go to our grant making software to see all the questions, you can also download the application questions on Word. That way you can start formulating those answers. And then when you get to our grant making software, you can then copy and paste them into the actual software, which would make it a lot easier, a lot quicker for you to get through the process. If you have any questions, what I would suggest is you can email Dennis directly, but you can also, which is a better opportunity for you to get a hold of one of us within the office, is if you email this sysadmin@conalma.org. We have a team of individuals that get those emails, and so if one of us is out, the others can take responsibility and more quicker to answer those. So once you get to our website, up here at the top, you want to apply for a grant, which is at the top. And let me see if it's going. There we go. So once you get into, you click at the top, apply for a grant, you're going to get to our grant making portal, which we refer to as Smart Simple. Here on this website or on this portal, you're going to see all the deadlines that we've already gone through. Plus, you'll want to register here as well. So if you are new to CONALMA and you have not applied with us before, you do want to go where it says new to the grant portal and actually register there. And that's going to be an organizational registration. So you're going to tell us all about your organization. Once you've done that, you'll be able to log in with your username and password and actually get into the system. I'm going to click on it real quick. We're not going to go in depth on this. My page looks a little bit different than what everybody else's. So let me see. I don't think I'm able to access what it looks like for just individual people, but if you log in, you'll be able to see this. Once you log in, there are
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Still have fun with it.
Make sure your computer is on mute, please. So once you've gotten in, you'll be able to see if you have questions. Once you've gotten in, there's a dashboard that you can go ahead and get to that will be able to answer any of your questions. If you still need additional support, as I mentioned, you are able to go to our email address that many of or 3 of our staff members do have access to, and they will go ahead and answer any of your questions that you may have for us at a much more rapid space. So we do have an opportunity for grant making annual reports. So I'm going to go back to our website. Once again, you're going to go to grant making if you want more information or apply for a grant. The last thing I want to go ahead and share is that we do have a great staff at CONALMA that is here to support you in what it is that you may need. And so as you can see, Dennis McCutcheon is our program officer. He's the one that deals most with our grants and our grant processes. He's the one that'll be more in contact with you if there are questions within the grant or if there's anything that we need to follow up on. Dennis is a wonderful resource. Definitely reach out to him if you have any specific questions about our grant process, about your program, anything like that. Cecily is our information manager. She's the one that you would reach out to if you have systems questions, such as with our grant making software, our Smart Simple software. She's the expert on that. Amy D'Onofrio is our associate director. She deals with a lot of the stuff on the back end, but she's a wonderful resource. She's been with us for many years. And then I'm the executive director. I've been with the organization for about 4 months or so. So I'm still learning a lot of the processes and procedures, but if you do have a question for me, I'm happy to answer it. If I'm not able to answer it, we have a wonderful team that I can reach out to that can definitely help us in getting those answered. Down here is that email address that I was mentioning. sysadmin@conalma.org. That is the best email address for you to email any questions to, specifically about the grant process, so that you can get an opportunity to get myself, Cecily, and Dennis all on one email, because we all are on that same email address to be able to answer your questions in a much quicker fashion. I am going to go ahead and stop for a moment. And I'm not sure if there are already some questions in the chat. But if there are some questions, or if you have some specific questions, please go ahead and unmute yourself, and we can go ahead and get that going. Let me
I have a question.
Okay, yes.
I saw that the budget template is there in the in your basic website. Do we download that, fill it in, and then upload it into the application?
No, sir. You will actually complete that as you would print it out, and then you would type in the numbers onto the actual portal. So you will not upload that into our system. It is just for you to work on, to use as an opportunity to get the information that you need.
So then the actual template to be used is uploaded from the application.
Yes, the information that we will look at is what you actually manually input into the system.
Okay, my next question is that I'm with the Lions Club of Taos, who's on a fiscal year beginning July 1. We can't get our budget put together for the following year until we have our major fundraiser here in the middle of June. Can I use the current fiscal year budget?
Yes, if you'll go ahead and do that and make a note on that budget, that you can provide us with an updated approved one a little bit further, then we can go ahead and look at that as well. I would suggest that if at all possible, you have that completed at the latest, you say the 21st or so of June, or maybe just a little bit after that, because once our reviewers get those applications, they do look at the budget. And so if it doesn't quite align, it may give you not as many points, if you will, on the budget if they can't align with what your expenses are going to be.
Okay, well, we'll try to get that done by July the 1st.
Thank you.
Because the event is in the middle of June.
Thank you. What other questions do we have? I see that there's a question of somebody asking if they can access the slides. We can go ahead and all the information's on our website, but we're also going to be posting this online, the actual recording, but we can email you some of the, these slides so that you have them as a reference as well. And so make sure you did include your name, organization, and email address in the chat so we have a record of sending it to you as well.
Yes, I have a question. Could you expand on what you mean by direct service?
Direct service would basically mean if, say, you're providing specific food. So if you're the food supplier, say for a food pantry, if you're actually giving those services directly to the individual, then that would be considered a direct service. And Dennis, do you want to kind of maybe elaborate just a tad bit on that?
Yes, so direct services are pretty much another example would be like individual clinical sessions versus helping a clinic to provide services to a larger population. So we do more of the systems than the direct services part. So I see some hands up. I see Brenda Quinones and then Jeanette Quintana Cook.
Hi, thank you. I have a couple of two questions. One regarding the funding. Say that our budget will change in September because we're expecting an award in September. Should we include that anticipated monies in the budget that we submit?
Dennis, if you want to help address that one.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was reading the chat and answering it in the chat. What was the question? I'm sorry.
No worries. I say that our funding will change in September. So that's prior to the deadline of this grant cycle. Should we include that anticipated funding in the budget application?
Yeah, there's a place to put that it's anticipated funding and then secured funding. So
Okay.
You could put it like that.
Okay, perfect. And then the other, I guess it's more common with the question. So our organization has applied several times in the past and not been selected. We feel we check off all of the criteria, all of the things that we just went over on the slides. I don't know if it's possible to talk with someone that can maybe guide us. Maybe we're missing something, or something's not elaborated well enough. Just
Yes. Yes, please get in touch with me and I could review your past applications and give you some pointers on like what scored low, and if there's any notes, I could share notes with you about your applications.
awesome, awesome. Because I know that's the reason we didn't apply last year. We were somewhat disheartened by the process and then being, not being selected. So, okay, great. Thank you, Dennis.
Yes, I'll look for your email. And Jeanette?
Yes, hi. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to give us all this information. It's really nice to hear everything. I just had a question regarding the set dollar amounts from 15K to 30K that will be distributed. And I just wanted to know if there was a certain threshold for the organizational budget that you kind of put into these categories. So, do you have to be like a $250,000 organization to receive the $20,000 amount? Is it just whatever you ask for? And then also, if there's any like specific amounts of how many people you plan to award in the 30K level or the 5K level or 25K level.
And so first on the first or the second question is that we do not have it split in amongst, we're going to award certain 15, certain 30, anything like that. It is based upon what you submit to us. And we don't have it separated based upon your budget. So if your budget's 250,000, there's not a set amount that you can apply for. It's based on your program budget, and if the need is there, if you can justify the 30,000 and where it is that it's going to go, that's what we look at within the grant applications. One thing that I will mention is that typically if you request say 20,000, we are going to either give you the 20 or not give it to you at all. We don't want to lower the amount because then we're not really helping you run the program if you had budgeted for 20,000 and not receiving that. And so there's no like middle on that. So just make sure that your budget can show your expenses for whatever dollar amount that you're requesting.
Thank you so much. That's helpful.
And so I see a bunch of questions in the chat, and we're coming up on 5 o'clock. I'm going to stay on and answer those. I'll go through one by one, scrolling up from the bottom. So you're welcome to stay. You're also welcome to raise your hand and ask verbally, and then I will get to the questions in the chat. We are planning to, if everything works out right, we're planning to share this recording, so that will be available. I'm going to probably post everything, either embed it or put links onto that how to apply page that we have that has all the grant guidelines and questions and all that. These will be included there. Also, I think I'll send out an email just to everyone who got this email for this session right now. So I don't see any hands coming up, so I'm going to start with the questions in the chat. And the first one is one of my favorites. Please expand on this question within the application. Can you give an example of a helpful response? Beneficiary participation. How will people you want to benefit participate in the work funded by CONALMA? Describe any input, outreach, volunteer participation, leadership roles, or other contributions they will provide. So the idea behind that is to learn how the populations that you serve are informing or giving input into the services that you're providing. So it's basically, the ideal would be if the organization is led by the population that you're serving. And, there's a lot of different realities, in New Mexico, and if that can be the case or not, sometimes that doesn't apply to your project. So a lot of times that the beneficiary participation would look like a survey perhaps, or a focus group or things like that, just ways that the population you're serving is giving input into the work that you're providing to them. So that is how that goes. Next question. When you're choosing your grantees, are you making an effort to reach all corners of the state? Yeah, yes, we do make that effort. And that is one of the lenses that we look at in the review committees is regional. We put lenses of, so first it's just scored on the application itself. And then we look at things like the demographics, the regional representation, and different things like that. So yes, on that. Um, do we only include one priority such as access, or do we include all priorities? So in the application, there is a spot, it's the primary priority, and you would pick one there. And then you'll have a option to select all the others that apply in a secondary option. So that's that. Email of the slides, yes. Can you mention the difference between the two grant opportunities, Alma Health Foundation statewide and Northern New Mexico? The main difference, the main differences are that is regional. So those cover Los Alamos County, Northern Santa Fe County, and Rio Arriba counties. It is a different review committee, so it's a whole different pot of money that comes from, and a whole different process, and a different committee of reviewers. Clarification about admin overhead cap at 20%. Um, I'm gonna see if Linda can clarify that one.
Absolutely. So when we're looking at the admin expense, for example, if say you have a program person that does the actual work with the organization that you're doing to actually release the program, they are actually program staff. So that can be part of your program budget. But if say you have an executive director that also does administrative work, or your finance director that does the finance, they're not directly working on the program. And so that's where we cap the 20%. It's on the admin staff or on the admin expenses, such as your electricity or anything like that, as far as if there's specific, if it's not just for the program. If it's program staff, you can use all of that. If it's facility expenses just for your program, that works as well.
I see Bill's hand up.
Question on organizational capacity. How much, we only have 100 words. How much background do you want on each of the staff? Their professional background or their name? You know, like we have the CEO of the hospital. So we say, here's so-and-so, he's of council, this is his task. How much of that do you want?
Bill, I think one of the things, and we've talked, I believe, previously with the Lions that you're representing today. One thing that I would focus on that is the people that are actually running the actual program. Maybe not necessarily your CEO, that's maybe the president, or unless he's the one that's actually doing the program. And if I recall, is this the one for the doctors or to get to doctor's appointments?
No, this is the pathway to health education.
Okay, so if whoever you have directly doing the pathway, the actual facilitation, that's what I would focus on more than just the administrative portion. But if you have additional and you want us to elaborate a little bit more on that for your organization, please schedule something for Dennis or I so that we can go through the specifics about your organization and how you would address that as well.
Yeah, because he has a task.
As long as he has a task, then that's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
That I can define that task.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. So I see a question again about the slides. So again, that'll go onto the how to apply webs page. And you can also drop me an email and I'll send it to you, but also we will send an email out with those. What are examples of your program? So I shared a link in the chat to past grantees, and we've seen that some of our pages on our website are displaying oddly. There's an error. So I've already sent an email to our host to fix that. And there's also a link to that on the how to apply page. And they are also in our annual reports. And I went to find those, and that page is displaying oddly as well. So I've got some emails out to the hosts to fix that up. Um, Linda, what does our logo mean?
There we go. What does our logo mean? There's many different aspects of our logo. One is we do have one of our state icons, which is our yucca. But if you also look at the part of our logo, we have a heart because we were previously known as the heart and soul of healthcare within New Mexico. We want to show that we're compassionate, but we're also part of the traditional New Mexico values and who we are within our state.
Can an organization in northern New Mexico apply for statewide and northern New Mexico, or just northern New Mexico? What would you encourage?
On that, what I think that what I would suggest is that you do not apply for the same program, if you will, from both of the funds. Even if you don't get approved from, because you're not going to know until the same time frame what you're going to get approved for, because we do the approval process. Well, it's a little different. It's at the same timing, basically. So I wouldn't recommend that you do that. But if you have different programs or different part of your organization that you want to apply for funding from both, you could. I would suggest not doing the same one for both of them.
We are a heavily youth-directed organization. Can funds be allotted to training, or would this be included in admin costs?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Can funds be allotted to training, or would this be included in an admin cost?
Training is definitely an acceptable expense because that would be in your workforce development, which is one of our focuses on as well. So you can include training as well as travel, especially if it has something to do with training your the individuals that are running the staffing, or that are the staff of your program that you're requesting funding for.
Is there a reporting back to CONALMA once funding is granted? If so, how long after funding has been awarded?
So we do require one report. It'll be at the end of the year. So in December of 2025, December of 2025, you'll have access to it beforehand, but it'll be due right around January 15th. And so that'll be the one report that you would have to complete for us. And so it would not be due until January of 2026. And that is the only thing that we require. We are doing right now we want to really highlight some of the organizations that we're helping support. So we are going to be working this year on doing some news stories, some articles on our social media. So we may reach out to some organizations that are approved, just so that we could maybe talk with you to highlight what you do within the organization. But that's definitely not a report. We just want to elevate what you're doing within the state because it's a great program. But official, just one at the end of the year.
And that is all the questions that I see in the chat. Oh, here's
I
one here.
saw one, Dennis, and it says, I didn't see a response yet, but it says, do you include programs within the Navajo Nation or just portions within New Mexico? We will include programs that are in the Navajo Nation, but only in the portion that is in New Mexico. So the portion that is in Arizona, we can't fund that, but anything you do in New Mexico with the Navajo Nation, you can definitely request funding for.
That's great. That question popped up again just now, so that covers that. And if anyone else has a question, feel free to unmute. No. If you have more questions or would like to meet about specifics about your project, feel free to email me. We could either address your questions through email or have a brief Zoom and discuss your project ideas and how they fit with funding priorities.
Absolutely. And I just want to apologize that our website is not working as it was intended to. So please keep watch on that. We'll get it fixed here shortly, and you can get all the information that you need or that we've discussed today. Please, like Dennis said, reach out. We will support as much as we can. I do highly suggest that you do not wait until the last minute to reach out. One of the things that we're hoping is that if you do need assistance is that you request that at least a week ahead of time so that we can make sure to fit you in within our schedule to give you the support that you need. So please do not wait to the last minute, whether it is with grant making software or is it with the program question. Right, if you have any specific, like Dennis said, reach out to him. He's happy to assist. And you know, we do have other people that can help him if he gets a lot of questions and he needs some support on that. So otherwise, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Dennis, for helping. And we will definitely be in touch with everybody, and best wishes on your applications, and let us know how we can help and support you.